All right, let's dive straight into this explainer. Today, we're talking about a man whose absolute, unyielding ambition literally changed the world forever. We are talking about Gaius Julius Caesar, the soldier, the politician, the dictator. We're going to take a close look at the fascinating sequence of events that took him from just a young guy navigating a really dangerous political landscape, all the way to becoming the absolute master of the Roman world. And, as you'll see, we'll uncover how his brutal assassination didn't actually save the republic he conquered, but basically guaranteed its permanent destruction.
But before we get into the massive empires and the armies, I want you to put yourself in his shoes for just a second. Imagine being held for ransom by ruthless pirates. This actually happened to a young Caesar while he was sailing to study rhetoric, the art of public speaking. Now, instead of begging for his life or cowering in fear like most people would, what does he do? He laughs. He tells them they have absolutely no idea who they've captured. He even demands they ask for more money because he thinks their ransom is insultingly low. He orders them to be quiet when he's sleeping, he reads them his poetry, and he calmly promises that the second he's freed, he's going to come back and hunt them down. Naturally, the pirates just laughed at him, but he didn't just survive this ordeal. He did exactly what he promised. Once that ransom was paid, he didn't just run home to thank the gods he was alive. No. He immediately gathered up ships and men, sailed right back, captured those pirates, and executed them. This astonishing true story is just the perfect illustration of the supreme confidence and the iron will of a young Julius Caesar. He could be incredibly charming, for sure, but he never, ever forgot a humiliation.
Section 1. Ambition and Early Life. Born into a Dying Republic.
To really understand Caesar, you have to understand the world he grew up in. It was a violent Roman republic that was basically collapsing under the weight of massive wealth inequality and powerful warlords. Rome wasn't ruled by emperors yet. It was supposed to be a republic run by elected officials and the Senate. But all this crazy wealth from conquering the Mediterranean had flooded in, mostly making a few aristocratic families super rich, and political competition was turning incredibly violent. Loyalties were shifting away from the Roman state itself directly to the generals who were actually paying the soldiers. It was a dying, dangerous system. One of these warlords, a ruthless dictator named Sulla, had completely taken over Rome and was purging his enemies. Well, Sulla ordered young Caesar, who happened to be connected by marriage to Sulla's rivals, to divorce his wife Cornelia. Now, even as a young man with a massive target on his back, Caesar showed this incredible defiance. He absolutely refused the terrifying dictator's orders. He lost all his property, he was forced to go into hiding, but he just wouldn't bow. Sulla eventually spared him, but he supposedly warned everyone that there were many Mariuses, meaning many dangerous ambitions hidden inside this one young man. And honestly, Sulla hit the nail on the head. So Caesar survives, he enters politics, and he quickly realizes something a lot of his rivals totally missed. Politics is all about spectacle and emotion. He went massively into debt putting on these huge, spectacular public games just to win the love of the Roman people. And it worked. By 60 BC, he used that growing popularity to forge an informal alliance with Rome's two other heavyweights, Pompey the Great, who had all the military fame, and Marcus Crassus, a guy with just extraordinary wealth. Together, this first triumvirate effectively locked down and dominated Roman politics.
Okay, Section 2. The Conquest of Gaul. Building a Legend.
Caesar knew that giving great speeches won you supporters, and having money bought you influence, but winning military glory? That made you a legend. Plus, he really needed a massive victory to secure his political power and, frankly, pay off all those massive debts. This led to his campaigns in Gaul, which is modern-day France and Belgium. And the sheer speed and psychological warfare of these conquests is just mind-blowing. Year after year, he pushed deeper into foreign territory. In 55 BC, he ordered his engineers to build a whole bridge across the massive Rhine River in just a matter of days, marched across it, and then actually crossed the English Channel to invade Britain. The crazy thing is, he wasn't even trying to permanently conquer Germany or Britain right then. The bridge and the invasions were purely psychological weapons. He was basically proving to Rome's enemies and to all those terrified politicians back home that there was literally nowhere he could not reach.
But his ultimate test came in 52 BC. A Gallic leader named Vercingetorix managed to unite the local tribes in a massive rebellion. Caesar managed to trap him inside a fortified settlement called Alesia, but then this massive Gallic relief army arrives, and suddenly they trap the Romans. So what does Caesar do? He orders his men to build a second set of defenses, facing outward, while still keeping up their inward-facing siege. So they are surrounded while surrounding someone else. It's a real tactical masterpiece. Winning that desperate two-front war at the Siege of Alesia shattered Gallic resistance for good. And more importantly, it solidified this intense, almost unbreakable personal loyalty from his veteran legions. I mean, he fought right there in the trenches with them, and they absolutely loved him for it.
Moving on to Section 3, Civil War and Absolute Power. As you might guess, Caesar's massive success in Gaul absolutely terrified the Roman Senate back home. By this point, Crassus had died in a disastrous foreign war, and Pompey had switched sides to align with the Senate against Caesar. They gave Caesar an ultimatum: give up your military command and return to Rome as a regular, vulnerable private citizen. If he did that, he'd surely face prosecution and total ruin. So he had a choice: submit and lose everything, or march his own army into Italy and kick off a civil war. In January of 49 BC, Caesar stood at the Rubicon River, which was the legal boundary of his command. He made the irreversible choice to cross that river with his army, famously saying, "The die is cast." Panic immediately swept through Rome. Pompey and the Senate fled the city, and just like that, the Republic was at war with itself. And Caesar's veteran legions proved to be completely unstoppable. He chased Pompey all the way to Greece and completely crushed his forces at the Battle of Pharsalus. Pompey ended up fleeing to Egypt, but he was actually assassinated by Egyptian officials before Caesar even got there. After that, Caesar quickly pivoted to handle an uprising in Asia Minor. And this campaign was so incredibly fast and decisive that he immortalized his speed and his swagger with 3 legendary words: Veni, Vidi, Vici. I came, I saw, I conquered.
Now, here is where his strategy gets really interesting. As he was defeating the last pockets of senatorial resistance in Africa and Spain, he used a fascinating political weapon: clemency. He famously forgave many of his defeated political enemies, even letting them right back into public life. So why do this? Well, the crucial takeaway here is that by granting mercy, he proved he was no longer their equal. Think about it. To accept his forgiveness meant you had to acknowledge that he had the supreme power to give it. He was no longer just another senator, he was now their absolute master. Eventually, he returns to Rome to receive all these extraordinary honors. He tackled massive administrative issues, and he even reformed the calendar, which is actually the basis for the 365-day solar calendar we still use today. But then, in 44 BC, he went a step too far for some. He accepted the title Dictator Perpetuo, dictator in perpetuity or dictator for life. He put his own face on Roman coins. He packed the Senate with his loyal supporters. To his enemies, the 500-year-old Roman Republic wasn't just dying anymore. It was effectively dead.
Which brings us to Section 4, the Ides of March, betrayal in the Senate.
A group of senators who called themselves the Liberators decided that if they were going to save Rome, Caesar had to die. And he had to die publicly, right in the Senate, to prove it was a political act of liberation and not just some private, shady murder. It's honestly thrilling to think about how history hung by a thread that very morning. There were so many warnings. A soothsayer had literally warned him to beware the Ides of March, March 15th. His wife Calpurnia had these terrifying nightmares and practically begged him not to leave the house. And you know what? Caesar actually hesitated. If he had just stayed home that day, the entire conspiracy might have completely fallen apart. But a conspirator convinced him that the Senate was waiting for him, and so he walked right into the trap. As the meeting got started in the Curia of Pompey, a bunch of senators crowded around him with this fake petition. Then, suddenly, they pulled out their hidden daggers. The greatest general in Rome, the man who had conquered Gaul and won a global civil war, was completely trapped. His legions couldn't save him here. He fought back at first, but he was just quickly overwhelmed, suffering 23 brutal stab wounds right there on the Senate floor. And the most heartbreaking part? Among the attackers was Marcus Junius Brutus, a man Caesar had fought against, completely forgiven, and even promoted. Now, history debates his exact final words. Shakespeare gave us the famous "Et tu, Brute," while some Greek sources suggest he actually said, "Even you, child?" But either way, the tragic reality remains. He fell at the hands of men he knew, men he had elevated, and in so many cases, men he had specifically shown clemency to. He collapsed and died right at the base of a statue of his old rival, Pompey.
Section 5, Birth of the Empire, the ironic aftermath.
So the assassins are standing over his body, covered in blood, fully believing they are heroes who just freed Rome from a tyrant. But they had made a catastrophic miscalculation. They had planned the actual murder perfectly, sure, but they had absolutely no plan for the morning after. The Roman public didn't cheer for them, they were terrified, and then they were furiously angry. And the reading of Caesar's will? That was the final crushing blow to the assassins' dreams.
Caesar had officially adopted his teenage great-nephew, Gaius Octavius, as his son and named him his principal heir. This single act unleashed Octavian, who we later know as Emperor Augustus, onto the political stage. The assassins had managed to kill Caesar, but his name and his immense wealth had just been handed over to a brilliant, ruthless young man who would immediately spark another civil war just to hunt them all down. And this right here perfectly illustrates the ultimate historical irony. The liberators assassinated Caesar because they were terrified of one-man rule, and they desperately wanted to save the Republic. But instead, their desperate murder directly created the exact conditions for a permanent imperial system. After years of brutal civil war against the assassins, and then against his own ally Mark Antony, Octavian emerged victorious as Augustus, Rome's very first emperor.
Finally, Section 6. The man who changed Rome forever. As we wrap up this explainer, we're really left wondering who Julius Caesar truly was. Was he the evil destroyer of a noble republic? Or was that republic already violently collapsing under the massive weight of its own corruption and inequality, and Caesar was simply the one man powerful enough and ambitious enough to take control of the inevitable? Honestly, whether you view him as a visionary hero or a ruthless tyrant, his unyielding self-belief and sheer drive remain a profound historical case study in human motivation. I mean, the guy changed the calendar, he redrew the map of Europe, and his name literally became synonymous with power for thousands of years. So it makes you think, what will you conquer with your ambition today? Caesar's ambition changed history. Please like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for motivation. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you in the next explainer.